Yeah, great. Thanks, Mark. And yeah, good to hear. I have a little bit of time to go into this in some detail. But what I do have is I have the benefit of being able to present tomorrow. So some of the things which I'll present today, I will go into a little deeper tomorrow. Today in particular, we'll focus on a new tool that we have developed and also some of the work we've done around service coalitions, which my colleague Larissa on the call has authored. In order to set the scene, and I think what connects us to the past presentations is particularly as we've moved through the day, there's been a lot of focus on what are, say, the tools and the solutions which SMEs or those who are supporting SMEs can look to. So our focus in IDH over these past few years, part of our focus has been in our value chain development work is how we can better identify innovations and interventions which businesses can take when they're engaging with smallholder farmers. And in terms of, I think, the story which we're largely all aware of, there's lots of innovation happening in the sector, but knowing where and how to innovate is often challenging. It often takes time. There's no one size fits all solutions. What we've seen in terms of evidence, again, lots different bits of evidence, lots of case studies, lots of pilots, not necessarily that much at scale. And also within existing literature, a lot of focus on, say, impact outcomes, but not necessarily focus on business outcomes and how we can really integrate these innovations into business models in a sustainable manner where over time they can be independent of donor funding. So around 8 years ago, under the Farm Fit Africa program, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and FCDO tasked us with developing a catalog of innovations, a catalog of impactful and promising innovations. And the approach which we took to this was an action research approach. So a lot of the evidence we generated was from implementing innovation together with agri SMEs ourselves. And a key aspect of that was because it's hard to research this, there wasn't existing literature. We had to generate those insights ourselves. We wanted to do it in a sufficiently standardized way. And we wanted to ensure we had this holistic business model focus. So there is that implementation advice. There is that business model language, which is necessary when looking at innovation more from a business model perspective and less from a project perspective. When assessing these different innovations, what we've always tried to keep an eye on are what are some of the contextual differences and also business model drivers which might influence the replication of innovations. And key influential contextual factors we've looked into are things such as value chain dynamics. So whether it's export crop, whether it's domestic, how loose, for example, the value chain versus high tight, how much side selling there is, whether it's perishable or not. Also looking into the degree of farmer organization and how farmer organizations can make certain innovations more viable. Rural and digital infrastructure, of course, so looking at roads, irrigation infrastructure, climate and environment, geographical distribution of farmers, and the policy environment. And then, of course, when we've been looking at businesses, there's been a number of elements we've been looking at internal to businesses. But in short, what's often been a consideration when collaborating with these businesses is, do they have the time do they have the time and willing to invest the time needed to implement a particular innovation? And they finance the investment needs? And are they able to absorb the risk of failure? So in some of the early days of our program finished last year, but in some of the earlier days of our program, we had quite a lot of soul searching on how we should best go about innovation with agri SMEs who are farmer facing. And we tried to map out where we think we should focus based on different criteria. On the top, you can see that we tried to focus. We recognize that innovations it's a very broad word and there's different ways you can see it. At one end, it can be incredibly new, transformative approaches using AI technology, using drones. On the other side, it might just be tweaks to existing approaches, or even in the middle, implementing approaches we've seen in one geography context business model with others. what we recognize and what you can see in this speech bubble on the right-hand side is ultimately there was low appetite and business model fit for some of the more transformative innovations. So we were focused a lot more on how we can implement proven approaches or adjust existing approaches. And also when it looks at the level of innovation, where we saw the most additionality and need, particularly relative to other actors in the sector, was to focus on how these business models engage with smallholder farmers, but also how ecosystems of business models engage together, such as partnerships, which I'll touch upon in the deep dive when we talk about service coalitions. So in terms of once we had been implementing these innovations and we wanted to produce insights for the broader sector, we created a series of innovation guides. And these innovation guides, you can see it scrolling on the left-hand side, they explain what an innovation is. There's a lot of detail about the value proposition, key risks or limitations, as well as contextual considerations. Where a lot of the value add is that there's very detailed information on design tips, say how one should go about designing such an innovation, as well as how one can enhance an innovation, whether they want to enhance the business performance or the efficiency of an innovation, or they want to enhance the impact of an innovation. And then beyond that, also complementary innovations and evidence on business and farm level impact. So we had begun to create these guides, and we have, I think, around 7 guides at the moment. But we also recognize that companies and organizations supporting companies need some way of being able to navigate and identify which innovations are best suited to their need. So what I will show today, but we will dive much deeper into tomorrow, is a new tool that we're releasing called the Innovation Library. And the Innovation Library, I'll give a live demo in a second. What it seeks to do is it creates a platform where users are able to navigate to certain innovations based on their objectives. They're able to filter it down based on, say, ambition level, their business model design, and they can then start to evaluate and assess innovations based on what fits their context or what fits their business model. This information is all evidence-backed, so it's based on external and internal research, and it's something which we seek to continue to update over the coming years. So just let me actually switch my screen to give a very quick demo. So this is the Farm for Insights Hub, and I will, once I've gone through this, I'll put the link in the chat, because I also want, what I want people to do actually is to play around with this tool overnight or tomorrow in the day, and then tomorrow's breakout session we'll be able to go into more detail. How this tool works is from this first screen, you can select multiple objectives. So for instance, say you're a business and the key objectives you're looking at is you're looking to reduce the cost to serve smallholder farmers. You're perhaps looking to address some sourcing needs, so maybe around quality and variety. And then you're looking to improve yields farm level. You can click through to see innovations. And what it does is it pulls up every innovation which satisfies at least one of those objectives, but then it arranges those innovations based on how many objectives they satisfy. So what you can see here at the top is we have a number which are, say, a strong match as well as a partial match. To further support curating of these innovations, we allow people to use different filters. So filters on the type of innovation. For instance, if it's focused on, say, partnerships, the ambition level. So maybe here we'll say we want to exclude things which might have high time and risk and investment implications. And you could also use lead actor. And then lastly, as a last thing to share, and I will do another demo tomorrow, is we also facilitate the comparison of different innovations side by side. So you can compare 3 innovations side by side, which starts to give you some high level information about each of these innovations, the objectives they've addressed, target demographic, time needs, context best suited to, and then clicking lastly to an innovation, and the innovation which we'll focus on later today. Here is an example of service coalitions. So what service coalitions are is they're alliances between different organizations, so often different SMEs, but also can include other actors, financial service providers, input manufacturers, working together in a coalition to provide services to smallholder farmers. And the logic there is by providing the services in a coalition, they can focus on what each does best in order to enhance service delivery and create efficiencies. What you can also see on this is more information here, but I think what's also crucial is to bring it all together. It links back to some of the other resources which we've produced at IDH, but also resources which other organizations have produced, such as navigating to an innovation guide. So I'll go into more detail on service coalitions in the breakouts. And tomorrow I will be very keen to get some feedback on the tool, people's first feels of the tool, where people think we should prioritize in terms of going forward. But let me round up there, and I will pop the link in the chat. Thanks, Ken. That's great.